The British had a negative impact on Palestine because it caused instability within the region, and their Allied diplomacy during the First World War was very contradictory. During the First World War, Great Britain crafted deals with surrounding countries with the intent to defeat the Central Powers. In exchange for siding with Britain, countries were offered everything from land to independence. While this may sound good-hearted, it is seen as very controversial, being that there were many inconsistencies and that it is thought to have created vulnerability within the people of Palestine. Allied diplomacy during the First World War in the Middle East was contradictory and caused instability within Palestine because Britain promised one piece of land to two different groups of people. As stated in the Promises to the French of our Habibi textbook, the French and the British made an agreement known as the Sykes-Picot Agreement in May of 1916. This agreement states Palestine and the Holy Cities would be administered internationally. Then, at the end of that year, the British started to show more sympathy to the Zionist Habibi states. Jews were fighting to have their own homeland in Palestine, and the British, in quote, supported it. This led to the Balfour Declaration in November 1917, which stated that the British government viewed with favor the establishment in Palestine of a national home for the Jewish people, Habibi states. The Balfour Declaration totally contradicts the Sykes-Picot Agreement because the British first agreed to let Palestine be ran internationally. Then approximately a year later, they just, in quote, gave it to the Jews. This act alone caused instability in the Middle East because there couldn't be one specific government there because it was uncertain who Palestine truly belonged to. The British negatively influenced Palestine because they manipulated both the Jews and the Palestinians to the point where it caused instability and tensions in the country. These tensions led to the ethnic groups going to war with one another when they were coexisting peacefully before the British settled in Palestine, according to Miriam Habibi. Now on to Kenya. The British had a negative influence on Kenya as well. According to Jim Corrigan, in 1920, the country became a protectorate under Britain. There, the British started to take advantage of the people of Kenya. They took land from the native Kenyans and took over the highlands and forced them to move to the lowlands. The white settlers passed discriminatory laws stating that the Kenyans cannot own more land than them or make more money than them, meaning grow more crops. This resulted in the Kenyans working for the white settlers. However, the British did not pay them nearly enough as they should have. This forced the native Kenyans to fend for themselves. Many families died from starvation and lack of materials humans need to survive. The British influence angered the Kenyans and drove them to fight for their independence. For Kenya, there were many violent and non-violent tactics used to help gain Kenyan independence. Kenya's main leader, Jomo Kenyatta, used peaceful strategies in order to gain Kenyan independence. Jomo Kenyatta, according to Jim Corrigan, was the leader of the KAA and the KANU. He led peaceful protests and gave speeches to advocate for Kenyan independence. He also wrote many monthly newspapers which the British approved of. He talks about how the government is being ran and how corrupt they are and how the Kenyans want their own independence, according to Corrigan and Rowe. Kenyatta was sent to exile by the British because he was accused of organizing and running the Mau Mau Rebellion. After being released from exile by the British, he continued to write his newspaper and peacefully run protests. The British had a negative influence on Kenya because they drove many members of the Kikuyu ethnic group to unite and form the Mau Mau Rebellion. This group was extremely unrestrained. They used guerrilla war tactics to fight for their independence. While this group went against everything Jomo Kenyatta believed, the British weren't too innocent themselves. According to the Black Post, Britain also detained approximately 100,000 Kikuyu without trial, often for periods of time between 3 and 7 years. They were put into camps where they were subject to severe torture, malnutrition, and beatings. This was the most severe gruesome torture you could ever imagine. Black Post also states over 1,800 African civilians were killed, putting the number of Mau Mau rebels killed at around 20,000. The uprising was directed primarily against the British colonial forces and the white settler community. All in all, the British had a negative impact on Kenya because they mistreated the native Kenyans to the point where they acted out of character and retaliated against them, whether it was peaceful like Jomo Kenyatta or violent like the Mau Mau. Work it. Yes, honey. Britain also had a negative impact on South Africa. South Africa was impacted negatively from the expansion of slave trading in the 1800s, which was organized by Britain. These impacts are mainly socially related issues. After years and years of South Africa participating in the slave trade, tension grew between the native South Africans and Britain. After a while, random natives were forced into slavery. They were not treated with any kind of respect. Online article facts about the slave trade and slavery states the sexes were separated, kept naked, packed close together, and the men were chained for long periods. About 12% of those who embarked did not survive the voyage. Families and partners were torn away from each other, and the African slaves were treated terribly. From a journal written during this time period, the journalist states, I had an opportunity of witnessing. She was at least 30 years old, in the most miserable state of emaciation and debility, nearly doubled together, and with difficulty dragging her tottering limbs along. To crown the heart-rending picture, she was naked, carrying a heavy load of water while the rope about her neck. Whenever she shewed the least inclination to stop, he beat her in the most unmerciful manner with a stick. Slave trade in Africa states. This clearly shows how mistreated the slaves were. This was a negative impact on South Africa because the British angered the natives so much and drove them to fight for their independence.